Hey MJ, it's Kristen. Um, so I'm going to be sending you feedback via the videos like this one each week on your poetry. So please let me know if you have any questions about that. Um, and I also want to say thank you so much for attempting each of these prompts, for sharing your creative work here. I do feel like after I've had a chance to read these poems, I have a little bit more of a sense of your own poetic voice and of your background and where you're coming from and what you're bringing with you to this class. So I just wanted to say thank you for showing up the way that you did with this work. Let's talk about the first poem. Let's talk about the I am from prompt. Um, so I think it's really interesting the decision that you made to kind of have almost all of these lines the exact same length. It seems really like a really intentional decision to me, and I think it works really well. So what I mean by that is in comparison to the original poem, the Mary Pfeiffer poem, where she has much longer lines, very short lines, followed by long lines, followed by short lines, this sort of variation of line length. And so the way that that's functioning for me with your work is it's giving me the opportunity to really sit with these phrases from a space of expectation and broken dreams. I have a very clear vision of what that looks like, rather than if you had described that in much longer lines. So I appreciate that decision. There are things where I'm like, ooh, I wish I knew more about that. Such as, I am from an island I made for myself. I want to know more about that. I want to know what that means. What does that island look like? How would you describe that island to a friend? Um, and I think, let's see, from forsaken cowardice, I think learned strength is fairly obvious, right? That phrase. But forsaken cowardice, ooh, I want to know more about that too. What does that mean? What does forsaken cowardice mean to you? It's such an enticing little tidbit. So if you decide that you'd like to spend more time with this poem and do another edit of it, or work on it for your own benefit or towards the portfolio for the end of class, I would encourage you to explore those things, explore those moments. Um, and let's see, prompt number two. I really love the metaphor of the orchard. I love the metaphor of the trees, and their changeability. That's what's coming across to me. The trees, the orchard's changeability, the trees' changeability, and then your changeability as a writer. So I really like that concept. And I like the details you get into. And I like the details of letting go in particular. I feel like letting go is not a new concept when it comes to poetry, right? And when it comes to us writing poetry. And I feel like writing about trees is not a new concept when it comes to poetry in general. But I do feel like your poem is doing something new with um, those two, um, those two concepts, the tree and the letting go. And so I really appreciate the way that you've made it unique and made it your own. I do feel like I can understand you as a writer from this poem, and I don't think you played it too safe in the connection to the assignment, but I find that question intriguing. So it's like, okay, if you're asking that question, did I play it too safe? I wonder if you think you played it too safe, and what you would change or add that feels like you're stretching your own boundaries and you're stretching your own vulnerability, because poetry does come from a place of vulnerability. And so if you're willing to push yourself a little farther on the next edit of this poem, I would encourage you to do so and encourage you to see what that feels like. So if you do feel like you're playing it too safe, then I would say go ahead and re-enter that space and see if you can make yourself a little bit more vulnerable and share a little bit more detail and what that feels like. I guess what I'm saying is go ahead and ask yourself that question again and see how you would answer it upon reading this poem a second time. Um, I think that let's get into the lines here. I love the idea of touching the sky, the leaves changing color in the same ways we change. I think my question, though, is I'm wondering about the metaphor and the accuracy of the metaphor in this poem. So, it, do trees change the same ways that we change? When I think about trees changing, it's based on the weather. It's based on biological imperative, right? And so when I think about humans changing, I think about the choices we make, and that some of those choices are imposed on us by outside forces, similar to trees, similar to biological imperatives, and some of those forces are actually chosen by ourselves, right? And so I wonder if there's a way to incorporate that into the poem to sort of, now that you've compared yourself to the orchard and the changeability of the trees, how do you then step back and say, but here's how I'm different? So I'm not saying you have to do that. It's just something I'm thinking about while reading your work, and a suggestion for your next edit if you'd like to take it a little bit farther. So thank you so much, MJ. I appreciate your work this week and look forward to reading more.